We'll be starting with Quinn and Stawson in this video. Now, Willard V.O. Quinn, Criticism of Empiricism, Two Dogmas of Empiricism. Quinn, in his essay, Two Dogmas of Empiricism, criticized the traditional distinction between analytic statements, which were said to be true by virtue of the meaning of the terms they contain, and synthetic statements, which were supposed to be true by virtue of certain facts about the world. He argued that the difference between analytic and synthetic statement is one of degree rather than of kind. Now, existing distinction between made in knowledge, Hume made distinction between two types of knowledge, which is knowledge of relation of ideas and knowledge of matters of fact. Logical positivists also made the distinction that is, analytic propositions have only linguistic content and synthetic propositions have only factual content. Now, according to Quinn, modern empiricism has been conditioned in large part by two dogmas. The first dogma is there is distinction between analytic and synthetic proposition, and the second is statements regarding objects can be reduced to sense data statements, that is reductionism. Thus, for Quinn, abandoning these two dogmas will lead to the blurring of boundary between synthetic and analytic propositions and speculative metaphysics and natural sciences. Quinn believes that for being an empiricist, accepting these two dogmas is not a prerequisite. Now, critique of the first dogma, only quantitative difference exists between analytic and synthetic statement. There exists no categorical difference between them two. In all our statements, both linguistic and factual content are present. In analytic statements, linguistic content will be more, and in synthetic statement, factual content will be more. Even the so-called analytical propositions are also not immune to revision. Analytical propositions are relatively secure from revision, but not absolutely secure. In the case of radical changes, they will be subject to revision. For example, if the largest part of an army is affected, even the commander will get affected. Example, vector A multiplied by vector B is not equal to vector B multiplied by vector A. That is, vector multiplication is not commutative. In quantum mechanics, the law of excluded middle is not accepted. According to Quinn, the meaning of analyticity is not clear. In the process of defining analyticity, circular fallacy arises. Analyticity is based on synonyms and vice versa. Further, synonym depends on replacement of a word without changing the truth value of a sentence. For example, the statement, no bachelor is married, is considered as analytic by neo-empiricists since it can be verified by mere linguistic analysis. The bachelor is defined as unmarried man. The notion of synonym presupposed here. However, the synonym has still to be clarified again, leading to circularity. The truth value of bachelor has less than 10 letters will be changed if one replaces bachelor by unmarried person in the above sentence. Thus, Quinn aims to prove that the notion of analyticity as accepted by neo-empiricists lack clarity. Critique of second dogma. The idea of reductionism states that every meaningful statement is held to be translatable into a statement, true or false, about immediate experience. It is considered as the foundation for the verification theory of meaning. In his critique of second dogma, Quinn criticizes what he perceives as reductionism. According to him, all empiricists accept correspondence theory of meaning. According to them, a proposition is said to be valid if there is a reality if the reality corresponds to it. They reduce the objects into sense data. According to Hume, objects can be reduced to sense data or impressions. Objects are nothing but the collection of impressions. According to logical positivists, objects are logical constructions of sense data. Object statements can be reduced to sense data statements. Quinn rejects this atomic approach and says that it's the whole language which is verified and not a word or sentence. In Quinn's view, all sentences are interconnected, so that ultimately it is not a particular sentence that matters, but the whole language is meaningful. Individual sentences can never be verified, so reduction is wrong. Also, the ideas, impressions, and sense data, etc., cease to exist in the absence of objects, so we cannot reduce an object to a mere collection of ideas. According to Quinn, while we are verifying a proposition, rather than aiming to correspond our proposition into reality, it should be coherent with certain accepted beliefs. It turns out to be a type of holism in which the individual sentences or propositions cannot be verified. We are verifying the language as a whole and its coherence with other accepted set of beliefs. In what sense Quinn is an empiricist? Refutation of two dogmas of empiricism may give an impression that Quinn is not an empiricist, but this is only a superficial sense. Though he criticizes certain tenets of empiricism, he accepts two cardinal principles of empiricism. That is, first, evidence of all our scientific and philosophical theories is empirical ultimately. Second is, we can explain meaning and language on the basis of sense experience. Now, whether it is ontology or analysis of language, both are ultimately grounded in empirical experiences. Though Quinn rejected conventional tenets of empiricism, he endorsed it in a radical sense. Now, other aspects, according to logical positivists, metaphysics is nonsense. Quinn holds that metaphysics is science generalized. Metaphysics is a science which is a systemized common sense. Philosophy is a conceptual analysis. Both scientists and philosophers are bound by same interest but differ only in methodology. Now, critical evaluation, according to Strawson, Quinn has a very high standard for defining the concept of analyticity. It is not possible to fulfill this condition. Analytic synthetic dichotomy is essential for both thoughts and knowledge. Otherwise, it will lead to skepticism. We can make a clear distinction between analytic and synthetic in an informal manner. For example, the 3-year-old child of my neighbor understands Russell's theory of types. Second, my neighbor's 3-year-old daughter is an adult. A 3-year-old child cannot understand Russell's theory. This can be validated empirically. A 3-year-old child is an adult is a logically impossible statement. It can be proved even without experience. Therefore, analytical synthetic dichotomy is necessary. Quinn has not differentiated between pure and practical mathematics. Pure mathematics doesn't demand experience. On the other hand, practical mathematics demands it. For example, 2 plus 2 is equals to 4 is pure maths, and 2 drops and 2 drops become one big drop is practical math. Now, P.F. Strawson, the second philosopher, ordinary language philosopher Strawson coined the term descriptive metaphysics in his book Individuals. Descriptive metaphysics aims to describe reality as it manifests itself to human understanding. Revisionary metaphysics aims to revise ordinary way of thinking and conceptual schemes in order to provide an intellectually and morally preferred picture of the world. It aims to establish a well organized system beyond the world of experience. They also differ in that revisionary metaphysics requires justification of some sort, whereas descriptive metaphysics does not. The speculative element is comparatively high in revisionary metaphysics, and they focus more on abstract entities. It should be descriptive. Moving on, according to Strawson, Immanuel Kant was a descriptive metaphysics. Kant accepts metaphysics as a matter of faith. Strawson was also a supporter of descriptive metaphysics, basic particulars. Strawson, through his method, attempts to find out some basic concepts, basic particulars in this universe. By basic particulars, he means a particular which needs no further other reference for its identification. They can be identified and re-identified without depending on any other particular. They possess the characteristic of space and time. To identify any entity means to locate it in space and time. All other particulars like event, conditions, sense, data, etc. depend on basic particulars to be identifiable. Material elements and persons qualify to be basic particulars. Ontological concepts like idea of Plato, monads of Leibniz, impressions of Hume, sense data of Russell possess the quality of independence but not identification. Hence, they cannot be classified as basic particulars. Theory of person. Now, persons are those basic particulars to which we ascribe consciousness. He considers person as primitive concept as it is not further analyzable. Thus, in Strawson's analogy of particulars, ontology of particulars, both the material bodies and persons share equal status. Persons constitute a fundamental, irreducible kind of being. Persons are credited with physical characteristics like height, shape, weight. On the other hand, various states of consciousness like thinking, remembering, seeing, deciding, feeling, emotions, etc. on the other. Thus, person is a basic particular with M and P predicate, that is material and person predicate. M predicate is height, weight, etc. P predicate is smiling, crying, etc. Now, genesis of Strawson's theory of persons. Generally, we ascribe material and conscious characteristics to human beings. However, this created following questions which remained unsolved for centuries. How these materials and conscious attributes are related to each other. Why these characteristics are attributed to the very same thing. Now, two possible attempts to meet these problems, according to Strawson, are ownership theory of self, that is Cartesianism, no ownership doctrine of self. Before putting forward his own theory of person, Strawson refutes the existing theories. Now, ownership theory of self, that is Cartesianism. According to Cartesianism, when we speak of a person, we are really referring to one or both of the two distinct substances of different types, mind and body. Person is the union of mind and body. Mind is the owner of conscious state and body is the owner of corporal characteristics. There is no single owner for both material and conscious states, and hence the second question is fallacious. Now, Strawson's refutation of ownership theory. The creation of dualism by Descartes itself is speculative as we cannot identify body and mind separately in time and space. Moreover, the concept of pure individual consciousness, that is soul, cannot exist as primary concept. We have no criteria to say that soul exists. The soul cannot be identified and re-identified in space. Strawson criticizes Descartes' ownership theory by stating that I can ascribe states of consciousness to myself only when I can ascribe it to other selves. For example, I can say that others are in pain only when I can identify others' mind, but it is impossible. Descartes' followers put forward arguments based on analogy. When one feels his inner states, he can identify its correlation with body behavior. By analogy, we can identify other bodies' behavior. We can thus infer their inner states. However, according to Strawson, this will end in philosophical skepticism. For example, an adult can suppress his pain and an actor can pretend to be in pain. But based on our criteria, we cannot infer the conscious state of other beings by analogy. Now, no ownership theory of self. According to the no ownership theory, experience can be said to have an owner only in the sense of their causal dependence upon the state of some particular body. For instance, expressions like I am in pain suggest that I am the owner of this particular experience of having pain. Ownership can be meaningfully applied only to those things which are transferable. You cannot transfer conscious as well as corporal characteristics. For example, the knower can't feel the pain of others. There are only experiences and no owners for it. Thus, experiences are not owned by anything except in the dubious sense of being causally dependent on the state of a particular body. Supporters of this theory, like Wittgenstein in a particular period, Schlick in a particular context, Hume in all contexts, do not attribute the predicate to an owner. The word I does not refer to anything. It is only a linguistic subject. States of consciousness do not have any subject. At most, they are causally related to particular body. No causal relation is necessary, and hence there is only a contingent relation between experience and body. Strawson's refutation of no ownership theory. The position of no ownership theory is untenable because it cannot be said that all experiences depend on one body. If my experiences mean experience dependent on my body, tautology will arise. Usage of my itself presumes the existence of subject and I becomes the owner of experience. Now, Strawson's theory of person. From the above discussion, we can say that person cannot be only body, only mind, or combination of mind and body. Concept of person cannot be reduced to any other concept and hence it's primitive. It is a unique concept to which both consciousness as well as material characteristics can be attributed equally. Strawson denotes them by P predicate, that is color and height, and M predicate like crying and smiling respectively. Material aspects is I am 6 feet tall. Conscious aspect is I am in pain. Now, skepticist view of P predicates. One can ascribe P predicate to oneself without any criteria. But for others, different criterias will be used based on body behavior. But skepticists believe that when criteria differs, the meaning also differs. Skepticism arises in ascribing P predicates to other. Behavioralists' view on P predicates: on the basis of body behavior, we can ascribe conscious qualities to others. Strawson's view is skeptics fail to understand that body behavior constitute a logically adequate criterion for ascribing P predicates to others. Behavioralists fail to understand that body behavior constitute only a logically adequate criterion and not the logical criterion for ascribing pre-predicates to other. For example, a person can suppress pain or he can pretend pain, and this results in philosophical skepticism. Thus, extreme path of skepticism and behavioralism can be avoided. One can learn to properly use p-predicate, learns that it can be used in different ways without any change in meaning. For example, the meaning of word pain is same in all cases. Thus, p predicate can be attributed only to persons. Person is a primitive concept to which p predicates and m predicate can be equally attributed. Strawson's acceptance of pure ego. Concept of pure ego is logically possible in the secondary sense. Ego will derive the identity from person it was. After that, we talk about the pure body. Similarly, we talk about the pure ego too. We can imagine that memory and consciousness are retained and pure ego remains. It can perceive things but can't initiate any movement as there is no physical body to support. Now, criticisms for the theory of person. According to logical positivists, Strawson's concept of P predicate can be applied not only to human beings but also to all conscious beings, which he does not explain. They also attack upon Strawson for accepting the concept of pure ego, in which he violates his own position. Strawson's theory of person is not a serious attempt to solve the mind-body problem. His theory identifies person as a primitive concept to which both M predicate and pre-predicate can be attributed. According to Strawson, the person being primitive concept are unanalyzable. However, when we conceptually distinguish between M predicate and P predicates of a person, we are not analyzing person. When M predicate and P predicates are ascribed to persons, it means two things. There is a supposition of a kind of underlying substratum of these predicates. Persons are made of M predicates and P predicates. Both positions violate Strawson's theory of person. That'll be it. We are done with Western philosophy. Move on to Indian philosophy.